Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Charles Schwab Data Dive Show. We've got a lot to get into. I feel a lot better today, so probably going to be a longer show since the initial research last night was cut short due to me being under the weather. But we have a lot of data to get into, especially since the show was shortened last night. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is simply the best tool out there. It is going to make you a much better gambler, a much smarter DFS player. Go check them out. It is well worth your investment. In the descriptions to all three videos to the streaming services, there are links to my social media. This is where I place interesting research, like I did today, around the upcoming golf tournament and for the baseball content that I put out, as well as my betting cards for the golf tournament of the week. So if you want to be a part of that research, like I said, I posted some today. There are 10 players who qualify this week under the circumstances or qualities that I put on Twitter. So if you want to be a part of that, if you want to try to guess who they are, maybe give you an edge in the betting market or in DFS, make sure you give me a follow at the links in the descriptions. And then finally, we are live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. How was your week, especially since last night was cut short? How was your DFS? Did you have a lot of Justin Thomas and Will Z on the same teams? Have you had any chance to look at the odds boards for the Charles Schwab? Do you have any early leans? All that good stuff, as well as any other questions that you have around the world of golf. So let's do our data diving for the 2022 Charles Schwab. And we start, luckily, with the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. Let me get the chair situated, everything going on here. Last night, the GCSAA tournament fact sheet was not out. So there wasn't much to look into as far as course-specific information, but now we can. We are at Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth, Texas. This tournament, while it's not been named the Charles Schwab Challenge, this event has been here at Colonial since 1946. So the course is the oldest, longest running consecutive course hosting a tournament on the PGA Tour. It is a par 70, just over 7,200 yards. So not sure we're going to look at a whole lot of short course metrics, especially it being a par 70. It's actually a fairly mid-length par 70, I would think. If it was a par 72, we might, just because there's 4 par 5s on 72s. But with this being a par 70, don't think it's going to be quite prevalent or prudent to look at, I should say. But it is just over a 7,200 yard par 70. We are on bent grass greens again, so this makes the 4th straight tournament that we are on bent grass, dating back to the Wells Fargo, which normally is at Quail Hollow, but because Quail Hollow's hosting the President's Cup this fall, they moved it to TPC Potomac, which has bent, and then the Byron Nelson has bent. And then last week, Southern Hills bent. So we've now got 4 straight weeks of bent putting that we can look at. And I will have some research in the Excel portion of the show that brings in a lot of the data from the previous winners. I mentioned how we needed to look and see if Colonial demands consistently good putting, especially on bent, or if guys just had a hot putter that week, and we can try to glean some of the kind of volatile putters, the ones who can really go blistering hot with the putter. So we'll see which of those two are the usual winners here at Colonial. But we are on bent grass. The rest of the course is Bermuda. And then the average green size is smaller than the average tour green size. This is 5,000 square feet, so 1,000 square feet less in size than the average tour course. So that explains why the proximity is a whole lot closer here than it is at the average tour event. The three putts are lower here on these greens than the average tour event, so that explains a whole lot there. Still, though, the greens are harder to hit, so that just speaks to the difficulty of the course that I was mentioning last night in the initial research. Not a lot of fairway, not a lot of rough. There are 6 holes with water in play. So it is a fun course. It's a challenging course, one that a lot of the PGA Tour players like to play. And speaking of, I have seen that there are 4 withdrawals so far this week. I'm sure more will come, especially tomorrow. But Harris English, let me actually make sure I have this right here. Grab this. So Harris English, Charles Schwartzel, Sepp Straka, and Bubba Watson have withdrawn, and the biggest news probably is Bubba Watson. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. He has a torn meniscus, so that's saying a lot that he played pretty darn well this past week at the PGA with a torn meniscus. So as somebody who has torn the meniscus in one knee 3 times, I can certainly empathize with what he is dealing with. So Bubba Watson will be out 4 to 6 weeks, but again, those 4 players that have withdrawn, Harris English, Charles Schwartzel, Sepp Straka, and Bubba Watson. They have been replaced in the field by Mark Hubbard, Grayson Sigg, Scott Piercy, and Jason Duffner. So when we get into Fantasy National, I do not believe they have updated that yet, or if they have, it's on the DraftKings pricing tab, and I only go to that on the DFS Tactics show. So I'll make sure to highlight again if we see any of those 4 pop up on these filters. I'll highlight them for you. But those are the 4 field changes that I know of so far. But there is a look at the Colonial Country Club course from an informational superintendent type layout here. The other interesting note is that this is a Bredemus and Paxwell, combining the two, Perry Maxwell design. Perry Maxwell was the course designer for Southern Hills last week. So it'll be interesting to see as you're watching, if you watch any TV coverage of Southern Hills, and if you're able to watch this week, if there are any similarities and whatnot. So just a nice little nugget of information there to use with your friends or family or whatnot. And not a lot we can do in Fantasy National in terms of the architect. Fantasy National only has 3, and Perry Maxwell is not one of them. But just a useful tidbit of information for you. But the main takeaways, I would consider it a medium length par 70, only because it's a par 70. So 7,200 yard par 70, small-ish greens, not a lot of fairway, not a lot of rough, bent grass greens, and Bermuda elsewhere. So that's a look at the tournament fact sheet. Let's go ahead and move straight in to Fantasy National here. And I'm actually going to refresh this page as I have not done so since early today. Trying to do a little bit of research and then rest up for tonight's show. I went ahead and put the preset date range at the start of this calendar year. But you can see some of the players that are still listed in the field. Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Will Z, Max Homa, Sung Jae, Tom Hoagie, Tommy Fleetwood, who coming off a top 5. Just a pretty strong, stellar field this week so far at the Charles Schwab. So I don't think I'm going to go straight into any, just an overview of strokes gained total. Let's go right into looking at some specific metrics. Since we know we're on bent greens now, let's take a look at some bent green performance. So I'm going to go on to bent here, and I'm going to bring up past course conditions. I have exited out of that tab. I'm going to bring that over here and close this other one. So I'm going to add a speed filter this week of fast. It normally plays fast. Now in 2020 they did slow it down a little bit for whatever reason. I don't know whether that was rain or whatnot. I don't know, but it has always been fast except for 2020. So I think it's safe to say that fast bent greens is what we're going to be on. So I'm going to add fast green speed filter, and you'll notice that we're going to have to extend the timeline here, because the only tournaments that we have measured data for are the PGA, the AT&T Byron Nelson, and the Wells Fargo. Masters is played on bent, but we don't have that specific data in Fantasy National. It is proprietary. So what we're going to do, as I did for Southern Hills, for Byron Nelson, I'm going to go back to a full 12 months. So I'm going to bring this out to June 1st. And that's going to give us enough rounds to accurately assess putting performance. Most of the players have, in the teens, we'll say, 14 on up to as many as 29. But the big thing is this is covering, I don't want to call it the bent grass or bent green portion of the schedule or season, I guess, but your big bent grass tournaments, the Memorial, the Travelers is on POA. Let's just take a look here. Rocket Mortgage, that's the one I was thinking of. John Deere, 3M, all of these in the late summer are on bent. So we are going to grab all of that data and any data that was from the fall. So CJ Cup, the Shriners, there was, no, not the Shriners, the Fortinet, excuse me. So the CJ Cup, the Fortinet, and then any of the PGA Tour playoffs as well last year, both the Northern Trust and BMW. So that is a quick look or explanation of the possible rounds in here. So your top strokes gained putters on fast bent greens in the past calendar year, going back to June 1st to today. Those players are Troy Merritt, Kevin Na, Sam Ryder, Bo Hostler, Christian Bezadenhout, Harry Higgs, Pat Perez, Matthias Schwab, Adam Schenk, and Abraham Answer. In fact, let's go ahead and bring up Abraham Answer only for the fact that because the PGA Championship is here, I'm going to bring up this leaderboard specifically to look at putting from the players that were in last week's PGA Championship. So I'm going to bring that all the way off here to the side. Let's go straight into the strokes gained so we can look at some putting. You can see Justin Thomas probably led the field, second to Lucas Herbert. But Justin Thomas, Will Zalatoris, Mito back playing this week. I think that's a good idea for him. Just get back right into tournament competition. Don't let the sting of what happened on the 72nd linger. Just get right back into competition. I like that for his sake. Let's see, Tommy Fleetwood in the field this week. Abraham Answer. So I will keep this tab up if we need to refer to it, but mainly I wanted to see who putt extremely well on those bent greens this past weekend. So I'm going to close out of Abraham Answers. But there's a look at your top putters in the past 12 months on fast bent surfaces. I'm going to go ahead and remove these filters. And I'm going to look at difficult rounds when it's difficult. We took a quick look last night, as everything was a quick look last night, but you've had a couple of rounds interspersed recently that were easy here at Colonial, but for the most part, it is average to difficult, and a lot of times it is just pure difficult. I mean, the entirety of 2019 was difficult. 2017, 3 of the 4 rounds were difficult. You go back further, it started to be a little bit more average and difficult. So it's actually gotten more difficult over the years, with the exception of maybe an easy round or two where, again, probably the wind died down. Let's see. Yeah, wind died down here. I have not looked at Wind Finder. The time that I've allotted myself to research away, be here at the computer as opposed to resting up, I was focused on course and player as opposed to wind. So we'll definitely take a look at that Wednesday night in the DFS Tactics show to see if that is needed for an assessment, but nothing with wind yet. But there's a look at the tournament course conditions. So this is why I'm looking at difficult this week. Coming again off the PGA Championship, obviously very difficult. The conditions were not easy with the wind. So in the past 12 months, just fine. 28 rounds is the max. So in the past 12 months, dating back to June 1st to today, your top performers on in tough rounds. Those are Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, Daniel Berger, Justin Thomas, Kevin Streelman, Jason Kokrak, Cameron Tringali, Sung Jae, Joel Damon, and Chris Kirk. So probably no surprise on a lot of these players. Your major champions, Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Scotty Scheffler, Daniel Berger, very, very solid in majors, even though he does not have one to his name. But last week, I hope you listened to my advice on being out on Daniel Berger. I'm going to be out on Daniel Berger again this week. Prove to me you're healthy. Plus 10 at the PGA, I'm willing to write it off. It was extremely difficult. Your first tournament, back from a month and a half layoff. I'll give you a little bit of leeway there, but show me something. Show me that you're healthy. Now, Louis did make the cut, but it was a clunker of a made cut. So him and Berger are both kind of in the same ballpark for me. Just continuing health. Prove to me that you're healthy over a multiple tournament span, and then I'll start to believe again. But that little spiel aside, like Jason Kokrak, defending champion here, Sung Jae, Chris Kirk, top 5 of the PGA, Taylor Gooch Jr. plays well when it's difficult, his top 20 this past week, yada, yada, yada. Just because I saw him out of the corner of my eye, remember Harris English has withdrawn, so he is not 14th. But there you go. There's a look at your top performers when it is difficult, or when the round is difficult. Going to go ahead and remove that. I'm not going to look, as I mentioned, at any course length. If you want to add the less than 7,200, I won't blame you. But because this is a par 70, I am more apropos to look at difficult. I feel like this would be a medium length par 70. Now, if it was a par 72, as I mentioned in the GCSA tournament fact sheet portion, then I would definitely consider it. But not this, not for a par 70. So let's see. Let's go ahead and go into strokes gain approach. I'm going to go ahead and bring this back in to the beginning of this calendar year, so January 1st forward. I'm just always a believer that strokes gained approach is the most indicative statistic for long-term success. So your top strokes gained approach players with no other filters, no difficult rounds, no windy, nothing. Just your top strokes gained approach players since the start of this calendar year. Will Zalatoris, Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, Luke Donald, surprisingly number 5, Cameron Tringali, Jordan Spieth, Daniel Berger, Russell Knox, and Mito. Luke Donald's a little bit surprising, so let's check on Luke Donald here, because this is shocking, at least for me. But I tell you what, the Puerto Rico we don't have, he missed the cut, so I imagine the strokes gained approach were middling at best. But he's been pretty darn good with his irons, minus the Heritage, in which he still made the cut. So coming to the beginning of the year from the Sony forward. Gosh dang it. I don't want to highlight all of you. There we go. Let's see. He's lost once, twice. He's only lost in 3 tournaments. Only one of those tournaments was atrocious. The Wells Fargo was very good. The Valspar was very good. The Honda was very good. All right. Well, there you go. At least with irons, Luke Donald's been pretty darn good. That's probably why he rates out better than he should in my data models. But that was just, it's kind of surprising to see Luke Donald. I mean, ahead of, big time players. Gary Woodland, Max Homa, Mito, Spieth, Berger. It's just kind of shocking to see, but numbers don't lie. So that is a look at the strokes gained approach. Don't think there's going to be too much to do with off the tee, around the green, maybe scrambling if it's difficult, but we'll have to see. The reason I don't think there will be, if we come to the course breakdown, again, if you want a more full picture of it, tune in last night, even though it's a little rushed. But you can see here, approach and putting just dominate the whole way up. From top 10s to top 5s to winners. Just dominate the whole way up. Around the green, just never gains any traction. Off the tee really doesn't either. It is all in these 2 statistics here. So that's why I don't feel off the tee is really all that important. And I don't think around the green is going to be important at all. So there is a look at the strokes gained approach. We've looked at bent putting. We've looked at difficult rounds. I don't know if we need to look at off the tee when hitting fairways are difficult. That's something I haven't actually looked at. So let's take a look here. Hitting fairways, difficult, a lot of difficult. I highlighted that last night in the course breakdown as well. The driving accuracy here is lower, so that would lead you to think that guys just hit it further, but it's actually a strategic forced layup course at points. So it's just difficult to hit fairways here. And something else that I pointed out last night while I'm down here in this portion of the breakdown is these charts here, or this graph here I should say. I usually don't pay much attention to it because they're all roughly about the same. This one's an outlier. You actually have a fair amount of birdie putts 25 feet plus here than you do at the average tour event, and then 10 to 15, like everything above 10 feet in terms of birdie putts made is higher here. That's just speaking to the importance of putting here. So we'll highlight that in the Microsoft Excel portion of the show, and then probably have to come back to Fantasy National to figure out if we want to look at the just consistently good bent putters like we just did, or if we need to try and isolate some high variance, highly volatile putters that can really get scorching hot for a week. So I think that's going to do it, honestly, for the umbrella tab here, the off the tee approach, around the green, putting tab here. Let's really kind of dig in and start scrutinizing a lot of this. I am going to switch to Microsoft Excel just for a second. It's not going to be that portion of the show just yet. But I brought this up last night and wanted to explain what I'm seeing in the data, and then we'll cover Fantasy National entirely and see if the two agree, because it doesn't seem like they do. So this is the evaluation tab that I bring in for each course. Did I catch a Luke Donald in there? Yes, you did. Yes, you did, P. Hope your weekend went well. Thanks for checking in on chat. Hopefully your Sunday was better than mine. I posted a research show, but it was 20 minutes because I was feeling quite awful. And as I said in that show, I will neither confirm nor deny that some of my horrific PGA Tour bets or PGA Championship bets, helped in that cause. But Luke Donald, just because you are just joining, Luke Donald's number 5 in strokes gained approach in this field since January 1st of this year. I can't believe it, but numbers don't lie. So yes, you caught the tail end of a Luke Donald there. Hey Josh, how you doing? Yeah, I'm going to try to recoup some of the asinine bets that I made for the PGA Championship, like I was just telling P. Hopefully your weekend went well. Mine did not, especially yesterday, as I felt incredibly under the weather. I tried to put out a show for you all, and it was 20 minutes or so, but hopefully your weekend went well. Hopefully you had some Justin Thomas or your DFS went well, because my PGA Championship was essentially over Friday. But coming back to the Excel portion here, just really quickly. So this is the kind of the what I call the evaluation. Any course that has a full field event regularly on the PGA Tour is compared against all the others. So you'll see like the U.S. Open, because the course at the U.S. Open rotates. The Scottish is a new field event. The PGA I don't have because it rotates. You had a bad week as well. Well, I'm sorry. If you got a lot of your advice from me, then you shared in my woes, and hopefully I'll give you some better advice this week. I felt like I was kind of on track. I just didn't have a lot of the right people on the same lineups. And the guys that I really, really counted on that were unique, most notably Joo Hyun Kim, that aged very well, like sour milk. that was bad. That was a bad one by me. I'll raise my hand on that one. Yep, that was it. But it is what it is. Now, I will say that last week, Monday, I had posted some research on Twitter. And throughout the week, Monday on the Data Dive show and in the DFS Tactics show, I mentioned that there were 8 players that qualified via the parameters that I set on Twitter last week. It's a backdoor win, is what I'll call it, but Justin Thomas was one of the 8 players that qualified under the metrics that I put out there. So if you're not a follower of me on social media, I went ahead and put some more research today out for the Charles Schwab. And if you missed the intro, there are 10 players this week that qualify under the parameters that I put out on Twitter today. So, join or, comment on the video, or, put it in social media, reply to the post if you can think of who the 10 players are, because it's a pretty fun thought experiment when you go through it, and it leads you to some decent values on the betting in the betting market if you assign to the parameters that I put out. So interesting research. Again, I'm a math nerd, data nerd. I get it, but that stuff's fun to me. So yeah. But anyway, so let me cover this real quick, since I've been rambling for now seemingly 10 minutes on this one portion. But again, this is comparing all the full field courses against each other. So off the tee here at Colonial, not really all that important. Strokes gained approach, a half a shot more important than the average full field course. Now, as important as putting seemed in the breakdown on Fantasy National, it's only about a tenth more important here than it is at the average tour event or average full field tour event. Now, granted, the difference here is I'm gathering the top 30 and ties, whereas we're looking at the top 10s, the top 5s, and the winners in Fantasy National. They do have the top 20s, but I go to top 30s just because top 30s, I feel like there are good values, especially in DFS. So that's why I bring in the top 30. If you want to disagree with that method, or if I should rein it in, I won't disagree, but that is where I get or why I do top 30, to try to find some values, especially in the lower parts of the price board. And that's why I recommend dumb people like Ju Hyun Kim. But anyway, so putting seemingly not as important as the graph made it seem, but we'll take a look into it. Speaking to the forced layup and strategic nature of the course, driving distance really not that much of a factor, especially when we consider past champions here. You got Zach Johnson, Kevin Na, Kevin Kisner. These guys just aren't bombers. So distance really isn't a big factor. Fairways, not really. If there's anything on that tab in Fantasy National, I'll look at greens. It seems like it's fairly important compared to the average tour event or average full field tour event. We go to birdies and bogeys real quick. Not a lot here stands out. Like at the John Deere later on in a month and a half or so, we're definitely going to be looking at birdies gained because it's 0.6 more important. But here it's pretty well even. If we're going to look at anything, it'd be birdies. But to me, this might be an opportunities gained type of week, as opposed to focusing specifically on birdies or bogeys. And you can see eagles. This just is not an eagle course. Birdies are good scores here because the course is difficult. But the main thing I wanted to bring up this tab for, and why we're going to scrutinize what we do in Fantasy National, the par 3s, the 4s, and the 5s. Seemingly the par 3s are not important here, which is surprising to me because if you check last night's show, you'll see that the par 3s, the 4s, and the 5s really are kind of steady as you rise up the leaderboard. They all are kind of right around each other. So you would think par 3s would be more important. It doesn't seem that way. Now, the one distance that says it could be more important is the 175 to 200. That does make sense because 3 of the 4 par 3s here at Colonial fall into this range. So if we do anything of par 3s, and if I do put any par 3 importance in the final mixed condition model, it's going to be of this length. But I'm not sure I will. That's what tonight's going to be for. But that's the par 3s. Par 4s, extremely important. Makes a whole lot of sense with the course having 12 par 4s. Just 2/3 of the course is par 4s. That's why it is what it's why it's important. And I always subscribe to the theory that par 4s are some of the most important metrics in golf behind strokes gained approach. And the 2 ranges we're going to focus on, 350 to 400, 400 to 450. 7 of the 12, at least on the scorecard, fall into this range, but there are 3 that are easily going to play into this range. So both of them are going to be a factor. So we're going to scrutinize both of these. I'm thinking that I might put par 4s and both of these lengths in the final mixed condition model by the end of the week. We'll see what the data shows tonight. And then the par 5s, really mitigated in importance here. Par 5s are generally the most important hole on the PGA Tour. It's where pros make up the most strokes in relation to par. But with only 2 par 5s here at Colonial, and them being fairly difficult, if I remember correctly, it's not important here. Almost a full shot less important than the average full field course. So anything that we look par 5s of anything will be a specific length, and I don't know if I'm going to do it. I don't know. I said last thing was par 5s. I lied. Proximity. The course breakdown in Fantasy National lists that the top or the majority of approach shots here at Colonial come from 125 to 150 and 150 to 175. Now, Josh and P, I know you have followed me long enough that this is going to be a broken record, but for anyone new tuning in, proximity is just, as a data analyst, proximity is the hardest statistic for me to wrap my head around because what I see specifically in the data does not match what the graphs and success is showing. So that's just my transparency in telling you that proximity is the weakest form of my analysis in golf. But it's 150 to 175 seems like it might be somewhat important, but I'm actually leaning total proximity for Colonial this week. But again, that's why we're going to go into Fantasy National and dig into it. But I don't want to have to keep switching back and forth from Excel to Fantasy National. So this is why we're going to scrutinize what we do based on the numbers that I was showing you here. So I will leave this up, but let's go ahead and go back to Fantasy National. And Simon says, haha, ask nicely and it'll happen. So let's go into the first tab here. Birdies and bogeys. Again, I don't know how much this is going to play a factor. I really think it's going to be an opportunities gained type week. And maybe we add the scoring relative to par difficult. I'm not sure yet. So I'm just going to take a broad view here. The most opportunities gained, or the best players at giving themselves opportunities since January 1st. Justin Thomas, Victor Hovland, Colin Morikawa, Will Zalatoris, Aaron Rai, Tom Hoge, Chris Kirk, Austin Smotherman, Kurt Kitayama, and Max Homa. And that is with no filters, just straight up. These guys are giving themselves the most opportunities regardless of situation, circumstance, all that. Like I said, I just don't see much in this tab. If there is, it's birdies. So the players that are top 10 in both opportunities gained and birdies gained, Justin Thomas is first and second. Hovland, second and third. Morikawa is third and 10th. I'll give an honorable mention here to a couple of players. Will Zalatoris, fourth in opportunities gained, 11th in birdies. You've got Max Homa, 10th and 17th. Nate Lashley, 14th in opportunities, 9th in birdies. But yeah, I don't see a whole lot in this tab. I'm going to use something from this tab, but it's I can almost guarantee you it's going to be around opportunities gained. But if we want to look at opportunities gained when it's difficult, just to get an idea and figure out if some of these guys overlap, I'm going to have to bring out the data. I don't know what I just did. June 1st to get enough courses or rounds that were difficult. So your top opportunities gained players when it's difficult. Those players are Colin Morikawa, Hayden Buckley, Tom Hoge, Aaron Rai, Taylor Gooch, Kurt Kitayama, Webb Simpson, Chez Reavie, Daniel Berger, Emiliano Grillo, and Sam Burns. So I remember vividly Colin Morikawa was in opportunities gained for both. And I think that might be it. I know Hayden Buckley's new. Tom Hoge's new. Rai's new. I can't remember if Kitayama was there or not for no filter since January 1st. But there's a look at those players that are best at giving themselves opportunities when it is difficult. So let's move to the next one here, fairways and greens, and I am pretty darn confident that if there's anything here, it's going to be greens in regulation. These greens are small, they're hard to hit, the course is difficult. So greens in regulation, I'll keep the difficult filter on, and then we'll move back. So your top performers or your top players hitting greens in regulation when it is difficult. Those players are Colin Morikawa, Alex Smalley, Russell Knox, Adams Vinson, Patrick Rogers, Sung Jae, Scotty Scheffler, Nick Watney, Chad Ramey, and Daniel Berger. So a lot of this seems to make sense, at least to me. Chad Ramey, his win at Corrales, difficult and long. Vinson's been pretty good with his irons lately. Sung Jae, Colin. Now the one name kind of surprising to me here is Nick Watney. Watney hitting greens in regulation at a very high clip. It just seems like he is not converting them or doing much with them, because you can see the form is bad. It's bad. But let's check his specific fairways greens. Yeah, so greens in regulation gained. And this was when it was difficult. So, okay. Honda, difficult. Arnold Palmer, difficult. Don't remember the Valero. It was average. Okay. I don't think the Heritage played difficult, did it? Okay, one round. All right. So, P, you caught the end of a Luke Donald. Now you're catching a Nick Watney. You must be wondering what in the hell is going on here. But numbers don't lie. There he is, Nick Watney, number 7 in the field this week in greens when it's difficult. So there's a look at those players. I'm going to remove the difficulty or difficult filter, bring that back into January 1st of this year. So the top greens and regulation gain players since the start of this calendar year, 1/1/2022. These players are Scotty Scheffler, Russell Knox, Alex Smalley, so he's in both, Tony Finau, Mito, Matthew NeSmith, Will Zalatoris, JJ Spawn, Colin Morikawa, and Sebastian Munoz. So Colin Morikawa, number 1 in difficult. It's a show from 2008. I mean, this you might be in a hot tub time machine or something, because I don't know. This is Colonial, to be fair, so this course has had a lot of history. Generally, guys who like playing Colonial play it well year over year, and guys who don't play it well, if they do come back, it's one of those courses you either love it or you hate it. Kisner, Naw, Zach Johnson, these guys have had continued success throughout their professional career here at this course, and some players just don't play well here for whatever reason. It's a different type of course. Well, there you go. Yeah, 2008. It's coming off a PGA Championship where Mito went full Phil Mickelson. I mean, who knows? But there you go. There's the top greens and regulation players with no filters. That's probably the only thing I'm going to be looking at this week in this tab. If we wanted to take a look at scrambling, just because the course is difficult, we can do that really quickly. So your top scramblers in rounds when it's difficult, dating back to June 1st of last year, your top scramblers when it's difficult are Justin Thomas, James Holland, Cameron Tringale, Kevin Streelman, Daniel Berger, Charles Schwartzel, JT Poston, Lee Hodges, Denny McCarthy, Ian Poulter, and John Pack. I skipped Harris English. He has withdrawn. So if you missed the intro or the first maybe 5 minutes of the actual show, I went over the field changes, but there are 4 withdrawals so far. Harris English is one of them. So there's a look at basically the entirety of what I was wanting to look at on this tab too. So let's go ahead and move into proximity. But before I do that, I'm going to remove this filter. And before we get too much further into the weeds of this data, now let's go ahead and look at the leaderboards, at least from last year, and get a sense of what has been playing. So here is last year's distance and good drives gained and all that. You can see here greens, okay. I mean, you had Poulter was slightly negative, and Troy Merritt seemingly didn't hit a green all week and still tied or finished solo 7th. But again, the emphasis in distance does not matter. Good drives, I mean, I know this is all green, but you have some pretty low numbers in here, so maybe nothing on this tab is big. I don't know, because when you sort on good drives gained, I mean, your leader in that category won the tournament, and there's some decent correlation. You got a lot of top 20s, but nothing that screams this is extremely important. You sort on greens, it's kind of the same. So yeah, it's lukewarm correlation at best, at least in my opinion. If we look at 2020, just kind of real quick here, go to fairways and greens. I mean, again, you see you've got a couple of negatives here, a couple of high negatives, and the good drives gained. Now the greens seem like they're a little bit more important this year, or were in 2020. Yeah, a little bit stronger correlation up top, but I mean, you still have Grillo, who missed a cut pretty high in greens and regulation gained. I mean, to be fair, that is Grillo doing Grillo things, missing putts and whatnot. But yeah, see, yeah, lukewarm. That's how I feel about it. Lukewarm. Let's come back to 2021. I'm not even going to go with birdies and bogeys. I'm pretty confident it's just going to be an opportunities gained week. But let's go ahead and look into proximity. So I was pretty confident that it's going to be total procs, but we're going to look at all three procs total 125 and 125 to 175 split twice, essentially. So your top proximity total players since the start of this calendar year. Hang on, I'll answer that here in a second, Josh. Your top proximity players: Victor Hovland, Austin Smotherman, Russell Knox, Justin Thomas, EVR, Eric Van Rooyen, Tony Finau, JJ Spawn, Christian Bezuidenhout, Sebastian Munoz, and Tom Hoge. And if you want to go and look at the top performers in all three total procs, 125 to 150 and 150 to 175, you've got, Victor Hovland, first in total procs, fourth in the shorter and 18th in the longer. Justin Thomas, 4th, 5th, and 2nd. Tony Finau, 6th, 9th, and 2nd. Anyone else that stands out? Maybe Lee Hodges here, 17th in total, 18th from 125 to 150, and 16th from 150 to 175. Now, it doesn't sound spectacular, but, I mean, you're top 20 in all three. That's pretty good. But to answer your question, Josh, am I onto or off Bryson this week? I am definitely off of Bryson. For the same reasons I'm off Daniel Berger and Louis Oosthuizen. Show me a continued span of health. And I don't really even care about performance, although that would be nice to prove that you're actually over your injury. But play several tournaments in a row, and have, at least some modicum amount of success. Like Daniel Berger this past week at the PGA Championship, I was completely off, which is surprising for me because I'm a Daniel Berger fanboy seemingly. But I just can't trust his health. Same with Louis. Now, Louis actually did make the cut, but now if Louis comes back and performs well in his next couple of events, I'll start to think differently about it. But Berger misses the cut. I'm willing to write that one off. The PGA Championship's always tough. Month and a half layoff or whatever it was for Berger. I'm willing to write that one off. Like, if he comes back and shoots another plus 10 this week and misses the cut, something's not right. Just show me continued span of health. Same with Bryson. Absolutely same with Bryson. And this course does not seem like a Bryson course. Now, we all know he can overpower a course if he's firing on all cylinders, but I just don't think he is. And if he's not firing on all cylinders, he's going to look just as stupid as he did when he said Augusta was going to be a par 67 for him. It's just not going to be a good look for him. So I'm just completely off of Bryson. A long-winded way of explaining it, but I'm off of Bryson. So there's your look at proximity, at least from an overview standpoint. Now let's look at the leaderboard from a couple of these years. And this is why I really struggle with proximity. Because you see here, proximity total, like, there's a lot of high numbers here. 475, 345, your winner was 250. I'd rather have Luke Donald than Bryson. Hey, you know what? You're hating on Luke Donald right now. He was number 5 in strokes gained approach, so he's got something going for him. But this is why I struggle, because your winner last year, your defending champion, was negative in every single approach length except for 200 plus. And if we go to the course breakdown, like 200 plus doesn't effing matter here. at least according to this graph. So this is why, as a statistical person, I just don't know what the fuck to do with proximity. Because you see, I mean, 150 to 175 and 125 to 150 are the most common approach shots here. But, I mean, there's not any correlation there. Like, right in the middle, this middle column here. I mean, look at all the negatives in the 125 to 150. 150 to 175, you've got negatives galore. I mean, I'm still thinking it's total procs. If you sort on total procs, you've got a pretty good amount of correlation in relation to proximity. I don't want to say that it's strong correlation overall, but when you compare it to other proximity leaderboards or rankings from tournaments, this is actually fairly strong. I mean, you got a top 5, 2 top 10s, and a top 15, a middling, another top 20. Yeah, I mean, this is fairly strong for total procs. I kind of like this total procs idea here. Like Sebastian Munoz was negative, but it wasn't an atrocious amount. Same with these guys down here. Now, Taylor Gooch was seemingly not very close to the hole ever. Doug Gim, but they made it work. Let's check 2020. Be interesting to see a couple of these years here. 2020, Daniel Berger wins. You see here, I mean, some more pretty high total proximities. All in the 250 plus, except for your winner, who was, I'll say, 200 plus. Now you see Bryson he did play well in 2020, but 2020 was just a complete shit show. So I had, in every facet of life, golf, everything. So and 2020 is like proximity. I don't know what the hell to do with it. But I'm still thinking it's total procs, because you look here, 125 to 150. You've got quite a few negatives. I mean, quite a few, and pretty high negatives considering the yardage here. Now, the 150 to 175 does have a little bit of more top end correlation, but you still have quite a few negatives. So this is why I'm thinking it probably total procs. I'll do one more year, but if you all see something different, let me know. But otherwise, I'm seeing total procs, and it's not really all that close. Again, this year it's pretty top heavy for these two, but you got a lot of negatives in here. In the 125 to 150, 150 to 175, that ended up top 15 in the tournament. Even if you come down here to the tied for 19s, you got a lot of negatives. But if you sort on total procs, like, it's not as strong as 2020s. You got a top 15, your winner, a top 5, a top 20, clunker, top 20, top 30. But you do have missed cuts pretty high in here too. So, if anything, I think it's going to be total procs. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's 200 plus, like Jason Kokrak. I mean, you see here, Kevin Na was really high in 200 plus. He was a leader in 200 plus, and he won. Let's see, 2020. Let's just go backwards here. 2020, or I guess technically forwards. Proximity. Yeah, your winner was positive in 200 plus. Now, he wasn't all that high, but he was still positive. But you had a little bit of negatives here. 2021, we saw that Kokrak was by far and away the best at 200 plus. Like, I don't know. That's what I got for you on proximity. I'm leaning procs total. That's what I got for you all. And when we move to Excel, we'll take a look at the guys that have played well here, if they have a propensity for a proximity range. But right now, I'm just thinking it's total procs. So because of that, I'm going to highlight just the total procs guys like I did before. But if you missed it, or weren't tuning in 15 minutes ago as I rambled, your top proximity total players since the start of this calendar year: Victor Hovland, Austin Smotherman, Russell Knox, JT, Eric Van Rooyen, Tony Finau, JJ Spawn, Christian Bezzecchi, Sebastian Munoz, and Tom Hoagie. So let's really dig in here. Let's go into the par 3s, the par 4s, and the par 5s. I knew it was going to be a longer show, but it seems like I've been rambling for a lot longer than I had intended to, probably because I just feel better. But let's look at par 3s, and I'm going to skip par 3s. We're going to come to 175 to 200. And the reason being, you see here in the course breakdown, 3 of the 4 par 3s fall into this range, and then you have an extremely long par 3. So if we take a look at the scorecard just to see if they fall anywhere or could fall anywhere else, like maybe the 200 to 225, because you got a 199, you got to imagine that at least a day or two that's going to play long. 190 pretty close, 192 pretty close, but 3 of the 4 are in this range. So let's just take a look at that range. Your top performers on par 3s from 175 to 200 since the start of this calendar year. You got Harold Varner III, Sepp Straka, Kurt Kitayama, Adam Svensson, Lucas Glover, Tom Hoagie, Webb Simpson, Scott Stallings, Nate Lashley, Carlos Ortiz, and P's favorite boy, Luke Donald. So now you got 2 reasons, P, for Luke Donald this week. There you go. As they say, bet it on black. You're going to put the mortgage on Luke Donald. There you go, buddy. Let's move to the leaderboards. Par 3 efficiency. Now, Jason Kokrak wasn't positive in that range last year. And if we sort, there's actually a decent amount of correlation, though. You got a top 35, top 5, top 15, some middling performances here, 2 missed cuts. But there's a decent amount here. You have a 4.1. Uncle Luke went to college near me at Northwestern. Well, there you go. I didn't realize he went to Northwestern, but yeah, that is right in your territory. You have Nick Hardy, Doug Ginn, Luke Donald. Apparently Chicago's a hotbed for golf. I wouldn't have known that. But you see here the max from 2021, 4.1. You got a 1.8, a 1.2, now 2.6, but that's just one hole. Do you really want? And Matty Fitzpatrick. Yeah, I think I do. Now that you say it, I do think I recall knowing that hearing Matt Fitzpatrick went to Northwestern. That's a pretty elite alumni for golf there. But let's see, 175 to 200, probably the most important range. We'll check a couple of years here real quick. Par 3, 175 to 200. Yeah, I mean, you have Mark Leishman that missed the cut, but look at the other high finishes around him. 15, top 25, winner, runner up. Yeah, that one's pretty darn strong in 2020. 2019, again, just trying to make this quickly. Oh yeah, really strong correlation there. So yeah, the more I see it, the more I am leaning just 175 to 200. So there is a look at your top performers at the 175 to 200 for you there. Let's move to par 4s. Before we do that, I'm actually going to go in the order I should be. Let's just take a look at the leaderboards and see if we think that the 350 to 400 and 400 to 450 are what are important, because I know I'm going to be just focusing on strokes gained par 4 in some way as well. Let's see. Look at that. First, second, third. I don't know if you can do much better than that. Top 10, top 15, top 20. 2 more top 10s that's real strong at the 350 to 400. Really damn strong at the 400 to 450. Top 20, second, 8th, 3rd, 8th, middling, 1st, 3rd, 3rd. There you go. If you ever wanted to see extremely strong correlation, there you go. Those 2 alone, very strong. And then I bet if you sort on the par fours, yeah. I mean, that's some pretty darn strong correlation. Obviously, the perfect correlation would be if the order of finish was in this range, but I mean, that's pretty damn close. Second, third, first, third, 20th, 14th, third, 8th, third, 20. Yeah, that's all right. Yep, we're going to be scrutinizing these par fours heavily. That's the way it was in 2020, or excuse me, in 2021. We look at 2020 real quick. Yeah, especially the 400 to 450. Look at that, 10.3 from Daniel Berger. Nobody was even close to him. That's how he won this tournament, was on these par fours. Still some pretty strong correlation here on the 350 to 400s, at least for high finishes. But, I mean, Daniel Berger just torched those par fours. I'm not even going to go to 2019. I'm pretty darn confident. So the reason why I think both are going to play, we did this for the par threes. Let's look at the par fours real quick. So it says here, sorry, I keep scrolling, 7 of the 12 par fours come from 400 to 450. But I want you to take a look at some of these yardages here. 406, you got to imagine that probably is going to come into or inside 400 a day. 407, 408. Now the others, 430 is not going to, like on the other end of the spectrum, like 387 could come up to 400 on a day. 389 could. That's why I think both of these ranges are going to play a factor. And we just saw how important 350 to 400 was in the prior years. Now, 400 to 450 did seem a little bit more important, but I think both are going to play a factor. So let's take a look at first at just total strokes gained par 4. Your top performers on par 4s since the start of this calendar year. JT, Scotty Scheffler, Brian Harmon. First time I think we've said him. Billy Horschel. First time we've said him. Daniel Berger, Nate Lashley, Mito, Tom Hoagie, Colin Morikawa, Sungjae and Willsey. No surprise. I mean, the top players in the world just play well on par 4s because it's 60 to 70% of each course. But let's take a look here. JT, first in par 4s, 5th on the 400 to 450. You got Scotty Scheffler, 1st, 4th, and 2nd. Let's see, Daniel Berger, 5th, 3rd, and 5th. So if you want to believe in the health, that's fine. He's got the numbers for it. I'm just not there until he proves that he's healthy. Nate Lashley, 5th, 7th, and 13th. Let's see. Will Zalatoris, 10th, 1st, and 12th. Justin Rose, you got 12th, 7th, and 9th. It's pretty strong. So there's a few of the players on par 4s. And then par 5s, I'm just going to look at this leaderboard real quick. I mean, do I even think par 5s are going to play a factor? I mean, that's some pretty spotty success there and not a lot of correlation, to be honest with you, right there. What's the score? I don't even know the yardages of these par 5s. 565 and 635. Now, they are 2 of the 3 easiest holes on the course, but you see really only the first yields an eagle at a decent amount. I mean, the 635-yard par 5 is a true 3-shotter, so you're not really gaining a lot of eagles there. With only, like, if they were both in the same range, maybe I take a look at it. I don't know if there's much to glean here. 2020, par 5s. I mean, your winner was negative. He was only positive on the one hole, and I don't think you want to put a lot of emphasis onto one hole. Again, not a lot of strong correlation. Now it's top heavy, 2nd and 3rd, but you got 2 missed cuts really high on this par 5 leaderboard. And you come down here, I mean, look at all these missed cuts, like all in a row. Good Lord. I'll do one more year, 2019, par 5s. Again, winner was negative. You had quite a few negatives in 2019. Now, at least the players that did well in the par 5s at least made the cut, seemingly, but they're still pretty high in finishes. So I'll put it to you this way. I'm leaning that if I put any emphasis on par fives, it's going to be strokes gained total par fives at 5%. I just don't see a whole lot here that justifies it. But because there is always that possibility, here are your top performers on par fives since the start of the calendar year. Scotty Scheffler, Maverick McNeely, Matthias Schwab, Jordan Spieth, Max Homa, Justin Thomas, Tommy Fleetwood, Taylor Gooch, Sam Burns, and Sung Jae. All right. I'm definitely not going to be focusing on a length of par fives this week. So that is a look at the Fantasy National portion of the show. Let's move to Microsoft Excel. I knew this show would be long to make up for last night's, so hopefully you all are sticking with me here. But let's do the what I like to call the early look file, but this is breaking out all of the strokes gained total from Fantasy National, broken out across all the statistics. So off the tee approach, birdies gained, par threes, whatever, everything. So I'm not going to filter out the players who have only played it once, but we're just going to take a note of it. So let's go ahead and look at strokes gained approach really quick and see how important that is compared to some of these other metrics, especially putting. So your top strokes gained approach players, Morikawa makes a whole lot of sense. Kevin Na, champion here, has done really well. See, this is interesting. Kevin Na, normally very good with the flat stick. He hasn't actually putt that well here. He's been hitting his irons very well around here and doing well. There's Gary Woodland's only played it twice. Let's see, Griot, extremely good with the irons. No surprise there. He's actually making his fair share of putts here. So Griot's an interesting name for this week, perhaps. Charlie Hoffman, another player that I'm pretty out on until he proves that he's healthy. Bezadenhout, only one time. Kevin Streelman, Harold Varner, Justin Rose. Rose has got a good combination here of the approach and the putting. Bubba's out. Berger's a champion in 2020. Brian Harmon has played well here. Let's see. Jordan Spieth, a lot of that being in the putting. So there's a look at that. And the putting, I'll just leave it at the putting there. I really kind of just want to see the par threes, fours, fives, and proximity. So let's do that. I'm going to sort by par threes, 175 to 200. And I think that is going to be the main length of par threes here. And again, the player with the highest is only a 2.4. So I don't know how important that's really going to be. Kevin Na's played that length of par three well here. Danny Lee, and had some pretty good success. Rory Sabatini the same. There's Griot again. Robert Streb, 3 for 3. McNeely's 3 for 3 here. Justin Rose again. So this does seem like one of the statistics that you would want to put some emphasis on, since these former champions and just players that play well here have done pretty darn well on this length of par 3. So good stuff there. But I want you to compare that, because you had Kevin Na, the leader, at 2.4 in strokes gained par 3 from 175 to 200. Now let's take a look at par 4s, because this is going to be striking. 2.4 was the leader in par 4 or par 3s. You got a 10.6 from Bubba. He's only played it once. But you come down to Jordan Spieth, champion in 2016, I think, 2015 or 2016. 7.8 in just strokes gained par 4. You got a 6.8 from Brian Harmon. You got a 6.6 from Tony Finau, who's played this event very well. Rose, a 6. Kevin Na, 5.6. This just shows the importance of par 4s here at Colonial. And you can see the lengths that seemingly are important. It's these two. Yeah, Bubba played all three of the links very well, but he's the highest in 450 to 500. I'm pretty sure. Like, you have one player. Let's see. You've got one player so far. You got to come down to Jason Kokrak. You've got of the what's this? 21 players. 21 players, and 2 lengths of par fours per. So in 42 categories, there's only one time where a player is negative in each of in one of these categories. It's Victor Hovland, and he made up this -1.5 by scorching the 400 to 450s. That's why I think both of these are going to be important. Total par fours are going to be important. Yeah, it's just there you go. Don't know what to tell you. That's a lot of green for you. A lot of green. Last thing I want to look at, because I'm going to skip par fives. I'm going to look at proximities here. I'm just going to sort on total procs. Procs total. And scroll over for you all and get a gauge of how this is looking. So Hovland, his 1 year, Morikawa. Now Chris Kirk, 4 for 4, middling finishes, but 4 for 4. Kevin Na, former champion. Charlie Hoffman's generally played this event very well. Abraham Answers played this event very well. There's Justin Rose. There's Grillo. Now, interesting, Chez Reavie is 1 for 4, but is very high on the procs total. So something's going on there. Brian Harman played it well. We've talked about McNeely, Danny Lee, Tyler Duncan. Okay. Brian Stewart. No, I'm sorry, that's Pat Perez. Brian Stewart, 5 for 5. Average finish of 44th, but 5 for 5. Everyone knows my propensity for Brian Stewart in the 6Ks. So yeah, there's a look at the strokes gained total broken out by the various statistics. I'm going to sort on finish, the best average finish, and just get a real quick vibe of what these guys have been playing well. You've got kind of a mixed bag here. Some guys are doing it with approach. Some guys are doing it with putting. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I don't see a lot in the birdies and bogeys. There's a lot of high green, but do you expect that anytime players are playing a course well? Surprisingly, though, the 175 to 200 par threes, you've got a lot of orange and red up here. Okay, you do have players that played it once. This is one time where I'm going to probably filter it out. Let's see. Now we'll check. Okay, yeah, that changes a little bit. Like Justin Thomas, he's only played it twice. He's not been good at this range, but there's Morikawa. Let's look at these past champions here. Spieth's a former champion. Justin Rose is a former champion, I think. Kevin Na definitely is. Kokrak's a former champion, or defending champion. So, okay in the 175 to 200. Let's take a look at the par fours. Spieth, very good. Woodland's played this event well. Harmon's played this event well. Rose, very, very good. Kevin Na, very, very good. Okay, all right. I'm starting to see Kokrak was okay, just okay at the par fours. And then finally, proximity. Yeah. So your champions here, where we got Justin Rose, pretty high. Kevin Na, very high. Let's see. Kokrak, fairly high. Kisner is a former champion. Now, he has not had a lot of proximity success, but is winning his way around here in a different way. I wonder which way that is. Probably par fours. Yeah, 350 to 400 and par four total. Okay, makes sense. So there's a look at that spreadsheet. We're running quite a bit over time, but I did promise one thing before we go. So this is the research that I've done around the winners this week, or at least winners dating back to 2012, because that's as far back as Fantasy National goes. So I'm going to highlight this column here. This is the strokes gained putting. So Zach Johnson, the year he won, generally a good putter, but like the form coming in, okay. I mean, he had some poor performances, but he's generally a good putter anyway. Like Boo Weekley in 2013. Now there's a name for you. If you want to talk about 2008 P, how about the name Boo Weekley? He won this event in 2013. There you go. Now he putt fairly well that week that he won, but look at the strokes gained approach. He was just ironing himself around this place, making just enough putts, because look at the putting coming in. He had zero form of the putter coming in. Adam Scott, 2.6 that week, but I mean his putting form was hit and miss. Now Chris Kirk that week seemingly made everything, but he didn't have a whole lot of form coming in. Jordan Spieth, everybody knows his propensity on the greens, but he didn't have the most amazing of form coming in. Kisner, he's always a good putter, has the ability to light it up, but he didn't have the best form coming in. Love some Boo. Yep. There you go. I knew you'd get a kick out of that. Rose in 17. Okay. He had some decent form coming in, but even then, so 7 here, 5-2. So to me, it looks like guys that just can get scorching hot with the putter. I'm thinking players like a Cameron Champ, maybe a Cameron Davis. I'll check him real quick, since he won on bent last summer at the Rocket Mortgage. So, I mean, he was 3.1. Like his spikes, I mean, they're only 6.4. That's not a high spike. You're looking for guys that can spike in the 8s and the 9s, seemingly, that have a chance. Let's check P's favorite golfer for this week. Let's see what he can do. Not a lot, seemingly. I mean, he has one spike of 6, but otherwise, yay. So he's definitely going to have to follow the Boo Weekly formula and gain 8.5 strokes, 9.5 strokes on approach to win this week if he's going to win. Okay. So I think that's going to do it for the Data Dive show tonight. Again, thanks for sticking around for the extra amount of time, trying to make up for last night. How was your all's week? I heard from Josh about the lack of success. Put it in the comments. Who do you have an early eye on? Have you made any wagers? Can you guess some of the 10 players that qualify under the parameters that I put out on Twitter? Would be interested to see if you all could narrow down that list. But as always, I appreciate your all's time and your all's willingness to spend some time and watch for all of the wagers that you've made so far this week at the Charles Schwab. For any wagers that you're thinking about making this week at the Charles Schwab. And until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.